In this video, we're going to be reviewing the Canon 85mm f1.8 EF lens featuring the Canon SL2, coming right up. What's up everybody? Phil with Bull City Pictures here today with the review of this Canon 85mm f1.8 EF lens, which means it can work on both full frame and APS-C sensor cameras. It sells for around $350. It weighs about 15 ounces. It's 3 inches wide, 2.8 inches long, 35mm or 35 inch minimum focus distance, so there's not, you need to get pretty far away, but that's okay. It's a portrait type lens. There are 7 groups and 9 elements. It's a 58mm threads if you want to use some threads with it, and it's got 8 diaphragm blades. I'm going to show you some pictures of this on the Canon SL2, a great little DSLR from Canon, especially for beginners. This is how the whole setup looks, and this is going to give you a pretty good portrait setup for around $1,000. I did a review of the SL2, and I'll link to that here also in the video description. But what I'm going to do is take you over to the computer. I'm going to show you some pictures that I took, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about pros and cons of this Canon 85mm f1.8 lens. Okay, here are the pictures. These pictures were taken with the Canon SL2 DSLR. I wanted to show you a few things as we go through these pictures. One, we're going to start at ISO 160 and then f1.8, and then we're going to ratchet up the aperture and the ISO so you can get an idea on how the noise is and then how the ISO might affect different shots. Also, kind of look at the corners as well to see when they start to sharpen up. You can see here that at f1.8, corners really aren't that sharp. If you look at the center of the picture, you can see that there's this purple fringing, or CA they call it, chromatic aberrations. It's really bad at f1.8, and we'll see how that clears up or when that clears up as we go through this ramp. So that is the picture at f1.8. The color looks good. You can see it's what I consider to be fairly sharp. We're going to step up now, and we're going to go to ISO 200, and then the aperture is f2.2, and you can see that that purple fringing is definitely decreasing in this particular shot. Corners might look marginally better, but there it is at f2.2 and ISO 200. Now we're at ISO 250, and the aperture is f2.5. And you can see that purple fringing is almost gone. And the corners look a little bit sharper. Now we're at ISO 320, and the aperture is f2.8. And you can see now pretty much that purple fringing is gone. You can see there's a little bit more depth of focus in the face at f2.8. You can see the corners look maybe just slightly better. This is ISO 400, and we're at f3.2 now. This is ISO 500, and you can see ISO 500 still, it looks pretty good. You can tell that there's maybe just a little bit of noise in the picture. Corners definitely look better at f3.5. Now we're at ISO 640 and f4, and this is camera shake on my part. Just not a great shot. Camera shook a little bit, but you can see that there's no chromatic aberrations. The corners look pretty good at f4. And again, the noise level to me looks pretty good. And these are all straight out of the camera. They've not been edited at all. So any of this noise reduction that's being applied is being applied by the camera. Now we're at ISO 800 and f5. And again, I think it looks pretty good as far as the noise level goes. You can see that it's definitely usable even as you zoom in, and zoomed out it certainly looks really good. Now ISO 1600, aperture is f5.6. The corner looks pretty good here. I would say it's acceptably sharp or near acceptably sharp in the corner. But again, corner sharpness for a portrait I don't think matters all that much because you might apply a vignette and try to de-emphasize the corners anyway. But if you're looking for corner-to-corner sharpness, starting at f5.6 is probably where you want to start. But ISO 1600, noise level, again, you can see a little bit of noise. creeping in there. Not too bad, I would say. I would say that's still usable. Now we're at ISO 2000, f6.3. Corners look good. And noise level to me, again, looks acceptable, even zoomed in at 1:1. 2500 ISO, f8. Corner definitely looks good. You can see the sharpness in the middle. Even with the ISO at 2500, still a pretty sharp image. You can see a little bit of noise in here, in the shadows. ISO 3200 and f11. You can definitely see the noise here when you're looking at the face, especially in the shadows. But zoomed out, looks pretty good. 1:1, bordering on usable. Now we're at 5000, f13. And you can see there's definitely noise there. You can notice the noise when you're zoomed in. But again, zoomed out, looks pretty good. And now ISO 6400 at f14. You can see there's a slight color shift. The colors look slightly different, and you can definitely see the noise. Now this is done all in camera. I wanted to show you what you could do in Lightroom as far as the noise reduction goes. Lightroom has some pretty good, what I consider to be pretty good noise reduction. Now this is that same shot we were just looking at. And this is zoomed out and then zoomed in. I've applied some noise reduction. Let's take it back to the original. So this is what it looks like without any noise reduction applied whatsoever. You can see it's really, really grainy. But if you bump up that noise reduction, it does smooth the image out a little bit, which I think for portrait is okay. But you can see that this looks definitely, I would say, usable. If we bring it back and compare it to what came out of the camera, you can see that there's quite a difference there. So I wanted to show you some other shots as well that we took with the camera. The lighting wasn't great. We're out in the middle of the day. You can see this is pretty harsh, but this one shows you the bokeh here. We're at f1.8, and you can see that word lunch is really out of focus. She's probably about 4 feet in front of it. We could have made that even more out of focus if we'd stepped forward a little bit, but you can see that the rendering of the bokeh looks really, really good. It doesn't look harsh. I think the bokeh looks really good. And then you can see at f1.8, there's still some of that purple fringing. And here's one at f2.8, just to show you what you can do with a little bit more depth of field. You can see at f2.8, her face is in focus. And again, the CA, or the purple fringing, seems to be gone. I just wanted to show you here, this is at ISO 640 on something that isn't a person, just a sign here, and you can see that that looks pretty clean at ISO 640. And here's another shot at f2.8, ISO 100. So again, you get an idea on what's in focus, and most of her face here is in focus. So f2.8 is a really good aperture to get a good combination of depth of focus or depth of field and also that blurry background. And here's one just to show you kind of some of the contrast and the clarity here. You can see that zoomed in 1:1. This looks really, really sharp to me. It's a really sharp lens. And I wanted to show you a little bit more about that chromatic aberrations here. You can see on this shot, this is just some water over a rock. You can see all this purple here. It's really definitely more pronounced here than it is on the sunglasses, although you can see it well in the sunglasses. I'm going to show you how that can be fixed. It can be fixed fairly easily in Lightroom. And Lightroom has a tool called the defringer, which is pretty simple and straightforward. You can pick the eyedropper and then just mouse over the color that you want and try to find a purple here. Click on it, and then you can see that that is pretty much gone. So it does Lightroom does a good job of getting rid of that. It might not be as good as if there wasn't any aberrations there, but it definitely takes that purple out. So those are the pictures. I wanted to show you a little bit about that. We're going to go back and I'll give you my pros and cons, and we'll wrap up this review of the Canon 85mm f1.8 featuring the Canon SL2. Well, those were the pictures. I think it's a pretty sharp lens. I'll run through kind of my pros and cons. One of the cons is that 35-inch minimum working distance, which means that you're not going to be able to get very close to your subject, which is okay. And that kind of goes into the second con. It's not, I don't know if it's a con or not, but you need to have a pretty good working distance from your subject. Since this is 85 millimeters, you multiply that times the crop factor on Canon, works out to be like 135, 140 millimeters, something in that range. So you do need to step kind of far away. The lens build quality feels pretty good. It's plastic. And really all you have on here is a focus ring since it's a prime lens, 85 millimeter lens. Again, it's a metal mount, very solid feeling lens, weighs just under a pound. Super sharp in my mind. The corners are not necessarily that sharp if you're shooting at 1.8. They kind of, as you saw, at 2.8, those corners will get better, and at 6.3, the corners are actually really good. But I think this is a great value at $350, and you pair that with this SL2 and you've got a portrait setup, a really good portrait setup for just over $1,000. This is Phil with Bold City Pictures. Hope you enjoyed this review of the Canon 85mm 1.8 lens. If you did enjoy it, please consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, please click on that bell icon, and that will allow you to be notified whenever we go live or put up a new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again in the next one.